All right, welcome to the Express Technical Committee meeting for May 20th. We have myself and Wes here from the TC, and then three of our triage members, Matt, Glenn, and John. The list wasn't too big this time, so it's pretty easy to just say it. We have a few things on our agenda. Remember, this is the technical committee meeting over the whole org. Update on our imminent Express 4.18 release, which is going to be our last full release before like 5.0 GA. Obviously, except for maybe there's a patch follow-up or something because of some issue. This is not, and then we're going to touch on a little bit of our triage stuff that we've been doing, including, any what's going on with the, how we've split off our triage meeting from this meeting now. So that we have two separate ones. We're also going to touch on some org-wide stuff, like we're talking about some issue templates, /PR templates, and talking about how that, we're thinking about that from an org-wide perspective versus like a per repo one. So I'll kick it off here with the Express 4.18. So we got a pull request up, which is our standard, release tracking pull request. As we're merging in, what's super annoying about it, what's always been annoying about it, and I know Wes has actually been interacting with this particular issue just recently to hopefully get us on a better path, is that the pull request status on these things take an eternity. So it just, especially when we're talking about PRs, because it kicks off 2 tracks of app voyeur, which takes 1,000 years. So kind of related to Express 4.18, really the release process as a whole, which will be nice, is Wes is helping, working with, I don't know his name off the top of my head, but it's as a community member effectively, to transition our usage of Travis CI plus app voyeur to GitHub Actions. And especially along releases, the current work on that shows that we can do an actual full test run in, I think, 1 minute or 2 minutes or something like that. And that's like all Mac and all Linux and all Windows runs. And that's pretty crazy compared to where we are. It's like probably at least 20 minutes because of app voyeur. It's because they, for their free tier, you can only do serial. Sometimes they fail, which is also annoying, and I have to restart them. And it's not because the tests are flaky. It's because it's flaky downloading Node.js versions. So other than that, that's basically moving along. There's a pull request tracker issue in there. It has all the various pieces of it, and it's basically just merging. I'm basically spending the rest of tonight just going one by one and getting all those in there. So that should be imminent for release here shortly. So also,
sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but I don't want to get too far past the action stuff.
Yeah.
Do we have any? Is there an end in sight on that PR? Because it's been a little bit, and this is the second PR. Is there something that maybe I could do or that we could do that would actually get this over the finish line?
Yeah, so I know that you were doing a lot of the conversation on it. And so I haven't really taken too much of a look, past some of the comments on there. And I think, so correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's ready. Is that right? Do you know? I don't know if there's anything you are aware of. So I know there was the changes about some of the comments, but I think it's all settled down now.
He did push after the last time I checked. So let me.
Yeah.
I guess I should probably look at it again, but
right. And on
the
that
major thing was just making sure that we didn't do anything that seemed too unexpected in it.
Right.
I know we have a pretty complicated CI setup here, but some of the WSL stuff was pretty surprising to me. And I guess that it does look to be resolved.
Yeah, so I think he did make address a lot of the things on there. So I haven't taken a too hard look at it because there's still a bunch of stuff on 418, but if we can actually get that landed in, I'll just land it inside 418, that way it'll be on the 4 line and get automatically on the 5 line. That'll be of course awesome, because I was also going to note too, like, we're not going to immediately stop supporting Express 4 the instant this releases out. What it means is, like, if there's like an actual true bug or a real security issue we can fix, we'll certainly fix it for, some period of time. The idea is perhaps a year or something like that after 5, but still, like, so having something like this in that 4 line will do us have a lot of benefit there, because then when we actually go to do something like that, it won't take, we don't have like a CI that takes, hours to go through the stupid thing. So yeah, getting this on to 4 will be, on the 4.x will be awesome. And so I was thinking about that too, which is why I brought it up especially. So especially if you want to take a second look yourself, see if seems to have addressed what you were asking about. And then we'll probably just ping them, say like, hey, do you have anything else pending yourself, or, are we good here? Because we can resolve some of those conversations that are just hanging around too. That'll clean it up. And so that will be sweet to get that in, of course, because, there was you remember too, before there was the pull request. I don't know if we closed it or not, to migrate to the Microsoft's Azure ones, which was,
that's what I was thinking of when I said this is sort of the second iteration.
Yep. And that was kind of nice. The biggest annoyance of that one was like the management of users were like completely different, which is what I hate about App Voyeur. And I have, don't like that the App Voyeur, especially, it's like has to be under my account because it doesn't have like a good organization solution. So I can't wait to get the stuff stopped using App Voyeur at some point. I looked at the Linux. I did take a stab myself at some of the Windows Travis one in my own repos. And it was okay, but I mean, it's certainly still nowhere near as fast as GitHub Actions is. So.
Oh yeah, the parallelization here, it makes a huge difference. So.
Exactly. So that will be.
Okay, so I can take a look. I to be honest, I've been sort of scrolling back and forth as you've been talking, and
Yep.
I think looks pretty solid now. So I'll take a solid look tonight, and then probably just give it a thumbs up.
Sweet.
So
Awesome.
Hopefully he's happy to finish anything else and get it merged.
Sweet. Thanks so much, because yeah, like I said, if we can get that into the 4 line as well,
Yeah,
be sweet.
the only thing I notice is that it's unfortunate it's still using this alternate install node action, because the core actions one doesn't support the older versions of Node, but that's like the only, and that to me is a pretty small thing. Also, I think Decode.io, if I'm correct, is also maintaining a couple of other fairly important things in this space. So I don't see it breaking, but it's just like a random, dependency to have.
Makes sense. Hopefully that, that should obviously just, die off as it gets merged into 5 branch. So it'll hopefully it will stay functional as long as we're like, keeping alive the 4 branch, and that's all we have to deal with it. So that'll be sweet. So yeah, that's awesome. I love that you had jumped in on there and push on a bunch of that stuff. So that will be really awesome to have that, because that's been a big pain. And of course, once we get that figured out, right, like, it kind of like just spills over to a lot of the other repos. That's how a lot of this stuff is, especially from the TC's perspective. Like, we say, hey, look, here's a good pattern for these repos to do, especially as we go, as we've, been moving towards product captains. We're not going to force, say if a repo in here wants to not use Travis for some reason, we're not going to say force it, but we'd certainly highly suggest it. It's kind of like the way we're doing right now with standard.js, right? When we said the whole org, we're going to do standard.js. So ideally, those are kind of stuff where it's like their opinions. And so having like a opinion on that kind of like helps push these repos to kind of like say, here's something you shouldn't really need to decide. You can just do this way. So that will be nice for that. We'll get everything on actions. here probably like, over the next coming months, just to, once we get the actions on here.
Yeah, once we have this merged, I would be happy to go and start proliferating this across the other repos. I've only been hesitating just because I did the one on the still sort of in limbo request object in Pillar.js, and like we have some pretty complicated stuff to get it all working correctly with the older versions of Node we support and the different, like just having to install an older version of Mocha, right, on certain branches is like, okay.
I know, and like, yep, and that is kind of like, I never really get that. I get it. That's what's kind of like, that's the kind of weird part. I always felt like, a test project should like try to support everybody, but like Mocha, things happen, right? Mocha, they changed hands. That's what we touched on this, I think, last TC meeting about the repos changing hands, and dealing with that. And like, yeah, that's a consequence sometimes. The new people, they're certainly helping out, but they have a different policy. You see, like they keep marching them up. It's what ESLint's doing today too. Like they keep making new majors, basically like constantly dropping Node versions. Even though nothing's really incompatible for the most part. Like that's why you see the Mocha just keeps working regardless. Its API is basically unchanged. So yes, it is odd.
Internals, but still it drastically increases our support burden as, if we have to proliferate that across every repo and then change it as soon as we do the next major on everything, it's quite annoying. So like there's definitely, I would hope that we don't get this far behind on most of the majors again in the future. And if we don't, it's probably fine. If we do, then we should probably work with them to figure out a better support plan for whatever we're using in the older versions.
Right. I think that unfortunately, I think it's going to be inevitable for Mocha. They seem to be extremely aggressive, where as soon as Node.js drops a release, they basically drop a new major version that drops that one. Which is, like I said, that's what their policy is. Whether they're willing to change it, I don't know, but that is super aggressive, in its own right, when a lot of times they just still work anyways. So it is a hard one. One thing I was also thinking about, especially along this, is, especially with GitHub Actions, I don't know if like this is some kind of like, I know you're doing stuff with the package.js stuff. So I don't know if like there's some kind of tooling there that could also be another possible solution if we want an in-between where we don't have to proliferate all this stuff over and over again, but, we still want to keep using Mocha, and Mocha might not have the exact same, support we're looking for. I don't know. Those are I'm just throwing things up there to think about.
Yeah, interesting. I think that one of the things that most of the people involved with the PKGGS stuff, and that's basically the package maintenance working group, we are pretty committed to trying to make sure that compatibility is maintained, I guess is maybe a loose way to say that. So testing when things will break in a certain node version or for certain dependencies is a priority. So there's a new project called Will I Break You, which is being worked on. And that's sort of a collaboration between the package maintenance working group and Beth is really the main driver of that, who works also on Canary in the Goldmine. So I think if we had a solution there, it might help us, but I don't think it's ever going to resolve a package maintainer deciding, no, I'm breaking here. I mean, I guess if they knew they were going to break Express, they may slightly second guess, because Express has a pretty special position, but still it's up to them.
Right.
So.
Yep. So
we can help. We'd obviously make it so that they can test it, and if they can provide backward compatibility without much sacrifice, then I'm sure we can probably make some. It'll probably make it easier than it is today when they just do it and don't even think about us.
Right. Well, even if they do think about us, it's hard to really do it right. That's what the whole idea about the "will I break you" kind of thing is for, just to make it, you know, a little that much easier to kind of like get it to try to do it if you wanted to.
Mhm.
So it'll certainly be quite nice. Um, yes. So, and this is kind of like, and I think that this whole thing is kind of like org wide since it affects a lot of our repos, mainly because a lot of the repos have been as all these middlewares broken out, they kind of like have just been cruising along like, hey, you know, let's at least support the same, our current version of this module, unless it needs some new API that's actually in a new node, right? Those are obviously not, or it's dependent on something, some dependency that doesn't, that only works on the newer nodes. Is that ideally they try to work with the same support plan that the current version of Express. So I certainly am looking forward to a little bit like when Express, with Express 5 to reduce a lot of those test matrices for a lot of those modules too, because of the bumped up Node.js minimum requirement. In fact, there's even a ongoing discussion inside of the Express repo about like, here are changes that we can do, and here's what node versions will require. So I'm trying to and getting all that kind of like situated there. So I think that that's mostly the updates around 4.18 specifically, and its fallout around all our other modules. Anything else on top of your head around that kind of area, Wes?
Nope. Now that I have a next step, I'll hopefully get a thumbs up on that
Sweet.
tonight. So.
Does anybody? So, do we want to? I know I didn't get a specific answer in the issues, but I don't know if like Glenn or John, if you wanted to like touch on kind of like how the triage stuff has been going. In the TC meeting, just I know that people, not only just from maybe myself, I know Wes is probably a little bit more connected, but also just for our viewers too. So
I'm not connected lately. I will admit I've been
okay.
distracted. So I'd love to hear the update.
Yep. Especially around
So
the separate
John,
meeting.
Okay, I'll talk. John just nodded. So we had a successful triage meeting. We onboarded some more people. They haven't started actively contributing yet. I hope to start and nudge them and start bringing them in. We always know that the more people volunteer, and then we actually find out it falls back to actually who will actually keep it up and actually contribute. As we know, it's easier to volunteer than it is to follow through. That's why I'm very careful with the volunteering. Because we all have lives, and as you said, I have to come to my basement to do anything. It's one of those things. So actually, it's going quite successfully, and I hope to have more good news on the triage front soon. And I've done some things with the organization I work at, and things are progressing, and hopefully I'll be able to speak about that soon. So it is actually, I think we're actually, I think, in fairly good shape. We have a plan. People should be humble when they come on to a project like this. There's a lot to learn if you've not done anything before. And most people, it takes time to talk them into the fact that they probably are good enough. It's just they're a bit worried about coming to do it. So I think we're actually in a very good state, and we need to keep perhaps just doing and plugging away the same way we've been doing, and working with a package maintenance group as well. To support the most important parts of the ecosystem, like Express. I'm enjoying doing my bits and bobs. I'm not doing any great things yet, but I would say that I think the template thing we're going to talk about is something the triagers probably need to enforce across the repo. Some minimum level of PR pulling.
Yep.
So
Awesome.
on the triage update, we've had one meeting since the last TC meeting. We did it the day after the TC meeting of last time. That was our onboarding meeting. I'd love to get feedback from Glenn, maybe somewhere else, maybe not here, about how that went. I'm worried I scared people away. I have no idea. But so from that meeting, we actually have Matt with us, Matt Wilson, who was in the last TC meeting as well. I think that he is the only person from the meeting so far that was prior to the meeting was not on the triage team and has since gotten on the triage team. I've seen him jumping into repos, doing some labeling and stuff like that. So thank you, Matt. I think we had like 7 people maybe total at the meeting last week or the week before last.
Yeah.
I haven't yet seen any new issues. I haven't seen anybody apply from that meeting yet, which is why I was afraid I might have scared some away. But I know that a lot of them are with Glenn's organization, so I think that he's got kind of a collar on some of those people. So we do have a meeting planned for tomorrow. It'll be a lot more informal. The last meeting was a lot of just exposition and onboarding and talking about trying to get people ready for what their expectations should be. I think we have the recording. I think, Glenn, you probably have the recording for that meeting.
I do have the video. I just don't know how to upload it. I could put it somewhere on, hang on, what's it called? Dropbox, and then give somebody else a link. So I forget what it's called. I've got it in my thing. I don't use it a lot, the Dropbox thing. Yeah.
If we can send that to somebody that can upload it to the YouTube channel, I think that'd be great. I'd like to be able to reference people to it.
Awesome. Yeah. And I know we still have like the issue with getting that moved somewhere else, but I definitely agree that we should get it up there. I think because the channel itself is not specific to TC, it's just an Express.js channel. So, and I know I think all the videos I've been we've been loading for the TC meeting even says TC meeting. So there is certainly no reason why we can't put all these, any other kind of like, recorded meetings on there as well. So that would be pretty nice. And I think I can even make separate sections. So like all the TC videos are like in one section of the channel, and the other one, triage is another section. I'll have to look into that, but that will just make it that much more organized, because then we can provide even just links to the specific, here's the TC videos, here's the this videos, etc. So yeah, that'll be sweet. Just shoot me an email with a link to the Dropbox, and I can get that uploaded. And of course, any things you want to put in like description, like I know we did that for the last meeting we took notes a little bit. And so, hopefully maybe, especially as we get more people, like these are all things that, people can help participate in, because like, generating, having just, people don't really watch them, but descriptions or meeting notes or other things like that will help make them more accessible, since, people just watch a video for an hour and hear us discuss things. But it is useful, but of course, when you have to go back to a previous video, it's hard to know which one to go to after the fact. But sweet. Well, that sounds good. You guys you haven't had any trouble, like, I know you only had one so far, but you guys have all the resources that you need to have these meetings. You don't need anything from like the TC in that regard at all?
I think we're good. Sweet.
Well, let us know if you have any.
I would love to hear, and Matt, I don't want to put you on the spot, but as a new member, is there anything that you, I think some of the most valuable input is from people onboarding. So I'd love to hear it if you have any feedback or changes you think would be helpful for the future.
Yeah, definitely. I've sort of been taking it slow here and there. The only real thing that sort of come across that I sort of scratched my head on was just a lot of the unlabeled issues out there don't cleanly fall into a single label that's there. There seems like a general overall matching cohesiveness to the labels, but there isn't a consistency necessarily across the different orgs and repos, and a lot of them don't have descriptions with them. And like, I forget even where I read this, but somewhere, maybe it was, I don't know, maybe one of John's comments in the discussions, but talked about how like the bug label should be put on issues that are reproducible bugs. But so if it can't be reproduced, you're not really sure it is a bug, but it might be, but it's triage, you're not really going to dive in maybe today to figure it out. What do you label it as? I've caught myself wanting to like use discuss as a catch-all, but I caught myself doing that. And so I sort of held off, and I sort of want to ask this question instead of, but other than that, it's been sort of cool just to go around and explore and see what's going on.
And I think that's a good.
Yo, go ahead. Doug.
Okay. I was going to say, just to put up like a finding, I think that the label thing is actually a really good thing that probably should be discussed an interesting tidbit from the past is that a lot of them are all very similar, because it was actually Jeremiah, one of our, former TC members, who actually had, he had like this little client-side program that would like sync the labels. And so we got like a ton of them synced. Of course, like, so you'll see some repos. Actually, just the other day, I was cleaning up a ton of random labels from the Express.js.com repo. Just, there's a whole bunch of random labels, like they said, like things like sprint and stuff. Yeah. So, but like, and that's a really good point that I think would be an excellent thing that probably needs to be done, especially as we bring triage people on, is labels is a good one, because not only having potentially a nice set of labels, and that is accessible in the repos, but like some kind of description somewhere. So there's a clear, so everybody has like at least some kind of common understanding of what each label does. And of course that can also help raise, here's a gap, like here's this issue, it doesn't cleanly fall into these labels. Perhaps this isn't, and you could leave it at that, or even provide a suggestion, like maybe a label like this would work. I think that is a great thing to, because I like that the labels that when Jeremiah synced them was all very similar. They're kind of generic, but having that kind of consistency just for myself was nice, even more so important now that, with a triage effort for sure. Otherwise you're going in every repo and it's like, what is each label? What do I need to do? So
not to beat a dead horse here, but this is one of the things where I think automation, like the stuff we're doing in the PKGGS group, this would be a great repo, like label syncer or something, right? Where like, if you come up with a good way that a organization can manage labels across repos and automate it a little bit, this is the kind of thing where you can do a code contribution that's not necessarily to, the Express code base per se, but would be very valuable across the ecosystem. So yeah, that would be, because that would definitely, if we had just one JSON file that said like these tags and these are the descriptions and they should exist across these, 40 repos, right. I would save a lot of effort there.
Yeah, I'm like potentially, go ahead.
I was going to say, I just saw somebody launch on Twitter like last week, a software as a service, which does literally just that. And I was like, I guess that's a problem other people have. Okay.
Right.
Well, if we want to use that, then that's fine too. I mean, if it's, free, I guess.
Yeah, I actually went shopping.
We didn't invent it here.
At one point last week. And there are a few NPM packages, CLIs out there that sync like the labels and colors and descriptions from one repo to another. So you'd have to like have a sort of a master repo with its labels like finely tuned. I don't know. It was an option.
That if you want to go and like figure out how to get that working across ours, I think that would be a great addition.
So I just added to the agenda for the triage meeting tomorrow, labels. What even are they? But I definitely agree, Matt. I've faced that. I've just decided, like, I'm just going to run with it and decided what I think what a lot of the labels mean, etc. But yeah, that's definitely something we should work on, and I think it's a good idea. So, but I think that also is a good segue into talking about issue templates, if we guys want to move on to that, if we don't have anything else to add here.
Nope, I think it is a great segue because it touches on, they're both similar, which is definitely why they make it, into the TC meeting, is because they're definitely, the idea is to be org wide. So we definitely want to go ahead and touch on that. I was going to kick it off by saying, like, there's discussions there. And so I meant to make it before this, but let me make it now. I'm actually going to go make the .github repo in the Express org and all the rest of the org, so we can have like a place to start making pull requests into. But I really I didn't know you could do that. And like what you showed, John, where you can not only, I knew we could make the different, buttons for making a new issue, but I didn't know you can make it so a button went somewhere else and not a new issue. Because I've seen people do, for example, the security thing, and then it would go to an issue template that would literally just in the description say, read our security policy, please don't open an issue here. which always was kind of like, felt pretty amusing, but I really like that we can go to that. And that almost to me, like just reinforces even more, like that would be, as we, especially like if we can get some of that stuff, mirrored or sourced on our, website, because then like that feels like a natural place that those would link to from the whole org. Cause like click on security thing, it's like, I don't know, some kind of security page on Express.js. And it's like, that's the default for all of our repos, because I think I think Wes has seen me do this before, where someone opened up a security issue in another one of the repos, but of course I say, here's the security policy. I linked to the Express repo. Then they're a little bit like, I get it. They didn't see it beforehand, but because it's in the one repo, and of course we could duplicate it all to the repos. But I think the issue template makes it a lot easier too, because but I think even the .github org, if we add the security.md in there, I think when you do the security tab thing that's on GitHub, I think it will also like put those together. I don't know. I'd have to check that, but that's what's also really
sure
nice.
It does. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it does. I added it to one of my like package generator things, and I'm pretty sure that it's doing that behavior you're saying. So I think we should make sure we create it on all three orgs.
Yep.
Even if we have the repo and don't have anything in it yet, it's worth just having there so that people can, we can, as we add new documents, it's easy to just PR them in.
Exactly. Yep. So that's what I'm doing right now, actually, just to get empty repos set up so everybody has the ability to start making PRs or even opening issues there. GitHub doesn't have a solution for, multiple orgs having similar stuff, but, it's still minimal. Like having some of this stuff, like being one repo in the org, and maybe at most we have to duplicate it 3 times at most, if that. I think that's a much more manageable process, of course,
I'm sure we can set up a GitHub action for that eventually.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I was actually thinking what we should do, and I was going to bring this up again in an issue, but slipped my mind. If we put the action on the GitHub repo and give it a token that from one of us that, or we can make a separate account or something, I don't know, but you can make a token that has access to all 3.
Nice.
All it would have to do would just commit and sync the stuff. If we're happy with that solution, I can write that.
Yeah, I would be happy with that. Like we would probably just make the one in the expressjs.com repo like the source of truth, and then mirror out to the other ones. And I think that makes the most sense, because that way we don't have to keep worrying about them getting out of sync or anything like that. Yeah.
And so just so we have context and so we're explicit for the recording or anybody watching, we're talking about, we don't have issue templates currently for any of the projects across the like almost 90 repos, et cetera, across 3 orgs. We're talking about creating a .github repo in each org, which will basically fill in any issue templates and other stuff into every repo in the organization that doesn't already have those files, et cetera. And that's important specifically because the security policy for Express is don't open an issue. It's submit it to an email of a maintainer, which is outlined in the security.md. But that's actually the only reason I use GitHub emails is when one of those issues gets disappeared, I go and I read it so I can actually see what the security vulnerability was. But this would allow us to have an issue picker essentially for every repo where you click start issue or create issue, and you have to select, you're forced to select from X number of templates, one of which can potentially be security vulnerability. It's a report, and it is just a link out instead of a template. It's just a link you to the security policy, which will tell you to email somebody, et cetera.
Yep. And actually on that note, it's not, I mean, except for just Wes to make sure that, you agree here, I'll just put it down later. But now that we have the OpenJS, they made us those listservs for this code of conduct. Yeah, we should get them to make the same thing for the security thing too.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. So let me just check my email really quick, because I'm pretty sure, so we could probably use the, let's see, the lists. So there's Express maintainers, but this is
Ah,
OpenJS Express maintainers. So to be honest, this might actually suffice.
yep, yep. And I was actually going to add that I have high suspicions that GitHub will launch, perhaps this year even, a way to open an issue that is not immediately public in the vein of things like security issues. So I have a hunch that that's gonna be a feature that is gonna be added.
They have some kind of security thing. So I was the one that suggested in the package maintenance group to use a .github repo for all
Yeah.
this stuff, and I've been learning a lot about all these things. There's so many hidden weird GitHub features I've been learning about. I don't understand it well, but there is a way to officially attach a security policy to your project, which will then like automatically populate that field instead of it just being a link.
I think that's what I was saying that I added recently to my generator. I think it's just like security.md in the .github directory or repo.
Their docs are really weird, but I don't know what, it doesn't matter, but
Yeah,
they talk about in their docs somewhere that there's some GitHub security advisory thing that I don't know. It doesn't really matter, but I think you're right. I think they probably will have that capability to do it all in GitHub at some point. But also just real quickly, just so this is explicit, the thing I'm excited about the issue templates is that I learned that they can automatically apply labels. So that basically completely, almost completely reduces the unlabeled issue triage stuff. Maybe we'll have a needs triage label at some point, but for the most part, as long we'll still have to like make sure people are using the right template, et cetera, but it will, that's the big thing for me is like, great, we get to automatically label these things, which is awesome. It's just one less thing for people to do. And it starts getting a whole workflow that we can work towards in triage, which is great.
Right.
Yeah, I agree completely. It also can auto assign people. So if at some point we wanted to assign the triage team, we could also do that.
Yeah, like to like here's the one that doesn't fit in anything, and like, because I was gonna say even then the labels can help too, where it's like someone opens up what they think is a bug, right? Because just like that's always a problem, right? Whether or not it's a bug, who knows? But like that's definitely takes a human to go really like figure that out, whether it's a bug or misuse or something like that. Or they just didn't understand something. And so that just helps also cut down, make it more narrow. So if people if people like, digging into those kind of things, having that where is, assuming, for people who pick the right option, saying I'm filing a bug and fill it out. And then people can actually do that. Of course, I know it's been brought up many times, and which is another nice thing about getting towards the issue templates is we can provide the suggested things that we're looking for people to give us. Things like, version of the module, what kind of system are you using? Basically, it's really just Windows or Linux or Mac, basically just so we have a understanding of that. And then, hopefully like, can you give us some example code and what do you expect to happen? What does happen? The kind of like standard things. So that will help kind of like, mold these initial issues versus like constantly having to just paste almost like, somewhat similar stuff as people open these issues with little to no information. So it'll be certainly very nice to have.
And I know we're just all kind of gushing over this, but I'll add one last thing that excited me about this stuff, because I spent some time today working on this stuff. And one of the things I realized is that with that link thing, where in the config.yaml, you can create links to say security policy or, oh, are you going to ask a question? Go here, et cetera. I did research into what a bunch of other projects are doing. But one of the things that excited me was I realized, for like maybe MIME type DB, it might be every couple of weeks, somebody opens up an issue, or PR, which is, hey, I want to add a new MIME type. And then we close it and say, hey, here's the criteria for adding a MIME type, et cetera, or here's how to add a custom one. If you just had a suggestion, which was, are you trying to add a new MIME type? You can click that and just redirect them to a whole documentation or there's not a lot of repos that have a bunch of issues like that, but for ones that are extremely repetitive, you
Right.
can just pin something to jump people straight to documentation, which who knows if people will use it, but that was exciting to me. So,
Yep, because it's hard to know how people use it, but think about it. They've already gone through the steps to go and click to new issue already. And so, having those buttons that make something they have to choose from, and then one that sounds like exactly what they're going to doing, I think can make a big difference to even those people. Because, I mean, you think about it, like they come across like that one in particular, the repo, there's a lot of, that one's not too big on the README, but still you have to go through, you kind of like scroll through the README to first before you file the issue. And, sometimes I'm sure people even control F on it, but they don't find the word they're looking for. So I think I think it can help a lot. Yeah, I'm sure more as we start doing it, it'll filter out a lot more of the noise. And so we'll remain with some noise that actually probably indicates some of these more like, here's cookie cutter ones we can add to these particular repos as well. I think patterns will start emerging. Yeah, some of the bigger repos we probably need to figure out how to help shape would be some things like the session repo, where there's a lot of like, because it's a complicated thing. It's not really the thing, the module itself, but like just, people are they're new to things like using cookies in general and stuff like that. And so you see a lot of the same help me posts that aren't really bugs. And it's like figuring out how to do with that might be something, because, whether or not it's like to write up a bunch of docs and then basically if we think that there's like a particular pattern that everybody runs into, for a bug, it could say like, new issue. It's like, my session isn't saving kind of thing. It's like, and that maybe that can go to like this giant, doc that someone writes up that's like diagnosing, how do you diagnose it and figure out what's going wrong? Because those kind of things, they're bugs per se. They're bugs in the technical sense, but not necessarily like bugs that need to be opened up on the module itself, if that makes sense. Because some of these ones, CSRF is another one. They're very particular to the technology that's in the web browser that we don't change, we don't make up, right? We just have to fit to that mold. And of course, sometimes to a lot of new people, that mold is just surprising because of all its weird legacy history. So yeah, having a way that we could over time reduce that stuff will be pretty cool to have. So I'm looking forward to it for sure. So I made those repos as you saw, so we can probably start, spill out some really simple ones. I'm sure we could just do some super simple ones just to get us started. Like, here's a bug. I just want to make a feature and I want to make a security thing or something. And then we can always iterate it over time. So
I have the rest of this week off, and I'm very happy to continue picking this up and I'll create some PRs and try to get some feedback from people. So I'm very happy to do that, because I was looking at my big list of stuff I've started putting together, and this is one of the higher impact, in my opinion, things. So I'm happy to work on that. I do want to do two things. One, call our attention to the fact that we're almost at time. And two, I just want to slip this into chat. It is to remind everybody, I've been working on the V5 changes working list. So I have a list that as of alpha 5.0.0 alpha.8, I have what I believe is an accurate list of the changes. I've omitted things that are changing in 4. So it's specifically things that should be like a diff between the latest 4 and also 5. Wanted to point that out, just say it's out there. But also, I really do want to hear from Wes if you want to speak about the Collab Summit session.
So I definitely do. I only wanted to add one thing to the discussion on templates. I think it is better to start slim and build than it is to try to go really prescriptive at first. I think I said this in one of the earlier issues, but if you're going to work on it, I think it would be great. Like, I would almost see us merging a small set of templates that just had like, what is your issue, a couple of auto labels, and like that's it to get us kicked off. And as we expand and we see whether those get us to what we want, because that was my biggest pushback in the first issue that opened with this, which had a PR, was just like, that's a lot of stuff. Like, I know when I go fill out these issue templates, I just did one just the other day with NPM, and I'm like, delete that section, delete that section, delete that. And like, what is the point of me as a user having to figure out what to delete? Because at that point, they got no value out of those sections. It only made me do more work. Anyway, I don't want to go on a soapbox or anything, but I think we should be very careful about starting slim and building based on our experience from a basic building block as opposed to the other way around. So
I agree 100%.
cool.
Yep, because then like, so like, for example, John, because you even said like, you know, you would have a lot of time on your hands. So like, you know, easy things to do is like, yeah, we can put a slim one, maybe like start immediately like working on like the action to sync them between the 3 orgs too, for example, because then like that will help us, you know, get all up and running like really quickly. And you could even do like, that's what I was like thinking before too. It's like a really slim one that's so basic. And then you could even immediately turn around and PR like enhancements immediately to them. So then we can take them piecewise and like, you know, say like, okay, yep, this makes sense and stuff like this. And so that way it doesn't end up where it's like this giant PR that's like, you know, endless conversation and then we don't actually get anything landed. So that's why I just wanted to second Wes on that too. That's really in my mind, that's the biggest reason, is just so that way we can get things landed and immediately value added versus like, you know, trying to like get the entire moon right away kind of thing. I don't know.
So my plan will be to open PRs to the one GitHub, Express.js.github that creates the folder and puts basically blank templates in it. Because I am most excited about the issues, and I also want to keep them extremely slim too, because it frustrates me when there's checklists in an issue template, et cetera. So yeah, I agree.
Sweet.
Cool. And if you decide that you want to start looking at this, I've been meaning to open an issue, and this hits on a bunch of things I'm hoping to work on at some point, just haven't, which would be a tool to mirror GitHub activity from one repo to another. So I don't know if this exists already, but one of the reasons why this would be really valuable from the package maintenance working group perspective would be, as people fork things, it's really hard to maintain the old repo. So say you're, you know, request.js and you're like, I'm deprecating this, right? But somebody says, no, I want to maintain it. All the people are still opening PRs against request.js, right? So if you were able to just set up an action that would mirror another repo, everything, branches, tags, commits, like the whole thing, it would make it really easy for you to say, I'm now maintaining an official fork, right? I'm going to then just set up this action and I'm going to then merge things selectively from that. Where that would be helpful here is if we had that tool in PKGJS, I know that's a much more robust thing, we'd be able to just set it up to mirror the GitHub repo across orgs. So I've been thinking about this because there's a whole bunch of other discussions going on with like how standard JS makes it really difficult to maintain forks, and the fact that standard JS has tabs and spaces and no semicolons is problematic for people. The PK Jordan just brought up on the PKGJS org that he wants us to be using semicolons over there, and like we're all using standard because everybody's using standard. Like, I don't want to get into like the issues around that particular decision. But if we had the ability to maintain a fork with very little intervention, then it would be a lot easier for these kind of things to move forward. And that just applies to the GitHub.github repos like perfectly. So if you or anybody else is interested in working on that endeavor, I think that would be something that would fit really well into the PKGJS org, and would then like kill a few birds with one stone.
Yeah, awesome. Because like, you know, and of course this kind of gives you like, just once again, I'm sure that mirroring does a lot. That's a lot to mirror, but like, you know, you started out with the goal of just the mirror, like enough for the .github kind of stuff, which is our use case, that kind of like kicks it off for the next person to continue to add more things to mirror, as they, reach the goals that like, Wes is looking for the PKGGS stuff. So
that's exactly my thinking. Like, this is the same kind of thing with the status board. I was like, I'm going to do the bare minimum to get what I think we would need to like look at from an Express standpoint. But like the hope would be that people come in and add all their other features and whatever, like NPM forked it and it's working really well for them. So.
Oh, sweet. I didn't even know they forked it. That's pretty
awesome.
I
mean, it's a loose fork, but still.
Yeah. It means that it tells you something about the concept of it in the general sense. So
a spiritual fork.
Like, sweet. All right. Yeah. So 5 more minutes here, so we don't go over time. And so we hit all the things on our agenda. And I feel like there was we were leading to something and then we went back to the issue templates.
Yeah, sorry. So it was just the summit.
Okay.
So I created an issue just to get the ball rolling on I was thinking we would do more than just triage, talk about maybe the repo captains and generally what's happening in the project. The idea from the organization of the summit is to have a track for people interested in participating in foundation projects. So it's like a contributor onboarding track. So I thought this would be a really good opportunity, especially since it's remote, entirely remote, for us all to maybe hop on and talk about what we're doing, think about what would be the most impactful things for us to present to the audience about like what the ways they could contribute. So I posted a link in the chat here. So it's OpenJS Foundation. Oh, okay, cool. Oh, yep. So I thought we if there's maybe discussion for us to have here, if not, just to bring it to people's attention so that, anybody who wants to be involved, I think it would be perfectly acceptable to start posting ideas over in that thread. If we wanted to host the conversation over there, or if we wanted to have, our conversation in our thread is also fine. But I mainly posted, I was the main reason for our thread was just to, oh yeah, now you see that. I see whoops. Yeah. Wrong thing, but there's that one, but I thought I'm pretty sure that there's also, maybe that's in the discussion. I think it's in the discussions. I just posted a comment linking to it.
Okay, good.
So anyway, we can have the discussion wherever we want. Just the idea is I wanted to see who's interested in participating, and what specific items we wanted to talk about.
Sweet. Yeah, that would be awesome. So yeah, well, we know that discussion, but yeah, I'll certainly, post on there some couple things too. So it would be pretty cool to have, because I think a lot of these things, talking about like, here's what we're doing, it'll, it might work for you, and like, here's kind of like why we're doing it. And I think is a really big, thing. Cause remember, we're not the only like larger org in NPM ecosystem, right? ESLint, that's a big one, Pug, I mean, they have a mono repo now, but I mean, still, like, they were a big one. I'm sure there are other ones. I'm just blanking right now, but still, like, we're certainly not the only, NPM module system with at least one org, if not more, and with a lot of different packages going on, and a lot of people collaborating, and how do you bring on board members and off board members, and get people to contribute and all this kind of things, and how do you manage everything? So I think it will be, these are the things that also people necessarily don't always want to think about, right? A lot of people want to think about code. So I think it's even more valuable, because it's like, here's like a pattern already, why don't you try it out, and, it might work for you, and make it so you have to think even less about that stuff. So yeah.
And I think for us, it's particularly interesting if we present some of this publicly, it's more likely for us to get feedback from other big orgs and how they manage stuff. Because I think we can learn a lot, and I think those kind of things are less commonly talked about. So just like having this track, I think will be really nice. I plan on going to a bunch of the other projects presentations just to see like what are they doing. Maybe they're doing stuff that would be really helpful for us to copy.
Yeah, that's a good point too. I like it.
I'm super down for it. I mean, the Collab Summit is how I got involved here in general. I think that obviously we don't have time to, hash that out right now, but maybe put on the agenda for next meeting. I think that like a phoning it in equivalent could even just be like a roundtable chat of just like what's changing or happening in the maintainership of Express. We can discuss it later specifically, but I agree that it shouldn't be just a triage or whatever. I think it's a much more compelling story if we talk about all of the wholeness of what's happening here. Even if we prefaced it or not with how did Express get here and where is it trying to go to or whatever. But I think that, there's enough people even in just this meeting that have the context from, PKJS, like you're working on, Wes, the package maintenance group in general, Doug being a long-time maintainer of a popular project, et cetera. Some of the things we've learned as triagers, et cetera, too. But like I said, if that's the phone it in edition, I think even that would be pretty interesting. So,
to be honest, I understand what you mean because it seems so easy because it's like, well, just come together and talk about our stuff. But I don't think that's even really phoning it in. I think that's exactly why us giving a presentation of some sort, would be valuable. I think. So from the last Collab Summit, where we didn't have any sort of formal thing, the intent was we were going to do the triage group, like onboarding as part of the Collab Summit. They were going to do what they were calling a coffee. It was like coffee chats or something, whatever that was. And it didn't pan out. But what I learned from doing what Jaresh and I basically, Glenn, you shared some feedback, I think, there, but I think it was mostly Jaresh and I talking about like what the plan was. That was super valuable, like 5 to 10 minutes of just, hey, here's where we're going. And if we did like 5 minutes on each of these big point topics and then let the rest of it be Q&A and like, whatever comes from that would be, I think, really valuable. Even if that filled like an hour-long slot. So I guess maybe if we had an hour, we could probably do like 10 minutes on triage, 10 minutes on what the project in general is doing. And the captain stuff hasn't really moved along super hard, probably because I've been, not pushing it. But, I guess that one could be. I was trying to think of more community things because like presenting on a specific technical topic is fine, right? But like that I don't think adds nearly as much value in this particular context as trying to get people excited about contributing. And to get people excited about contributing, you need to have like an onboarding and then like what do they do after they onboard?
I think it could be so phoning it in my mind is just us sitting down and like having what is essentially a TC meeting on air. I think ideally what would be cool is maybe getting a moderator from OpenJS and kind of like planning out what we want to talk about and have them ask us questions about like, so, how has this changed or how has OpenJS helped you do this, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't have to be an ad for OpenJS, but we could have a moderator to help lead the conversation based on points that we've decided we want to talk about, et cetera. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. I would love to, maybe we could talk to like Joe, who is the chair of the CPC, and see if that's something they'd be interested in. They're doing these like open office hours things, which I did go, I don't know if anybody saw that, but I did go and chat a little bit about Express on one of them. It was maybe 2 months ago now. And that worked pretty well. Like he asked a bunch of just questions that were, I mean, he already knew a bit of the context, so he was able to ask like important questions. But that would be, I think, a pretty good structure as well.
Sweet. Well, I think we're kind of like a little bit at time here, so I don't want to like try to cut it off, but I think it's a lot of good stuff here, and that'd be pretty sweet. And so we'll probably have some discussions about it in there, and then potentially maybe revisit it again in the next TC meeting if necessary. So awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining. I hope everybody got, out of it what they needed, and we'll have our next one. I'll schedule it here for 2 weeks time again. So, and by that time we should be well on our way to the Express 5 even more so than now, since we'll have the 4.18 should be out, and our hopefully last 5 will be out, and all that. So just kind of continuing to wrap it all up here.
Are we can I ask a quick question before we end? Are we all very comfortable with doing this every 2 weeks for a bit? Like, I know we have been. I missed a couple, but if we are, I have another automation thing that I'll set up, and I just hadn't, because for the longest time we've been more sporadic about it. But I'd be happy to do the automated issue creation thing on the discussion repo. It's what we're doing on the web server frameworks. And then Tyranny from Microsoft has been working on something similar to do for the entire Node org. So we were going to collaborate. And I think he was even going to do it for OpenJS. I'd be happy to open it's a GitHub action on the discussions repo to automatically create the issue. It just, and it would at least give us a framework and send us all notifications. Do you want me to do that? Does everybody, like, if we're going to do it every 2 weeks, then I'm happy to do it. The reason why I never did was because we didn't always do it every 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think we should. I think, we can always, if it doesn't work out, we can always figure that out. But I mean, worst case scenarios, if we really think, we can always close the issue it makes. If we really think we can't do that one or something like that, we can figure it out. But I think that, it's there. Especially, I think the biggest thing is, like, as long as we have like multiple TC meeting, what we could probably do is like just have it, like, as soon as it comes up, one of the TC members almost like assigns the meeting from themselves, and they'll be like, that's the member who will definitely get the meeting kicked off. I think if we just do something like that, we can be sure that none of them like end up slipping through the cracks where people are like, hey, where's this meeting? No one's here to start it. So that'll probably be a good solution to that problem while letting it be automated. So I like it.
Yeah, it's like one small YAML file. So I can open that. Cool.
Awesome.
Okay,
Sorry,
and I sent you a Dropbox link, Doug, which should be in your inbox.
Yep, I got it.
All right. So cheers, and I'll see you tomorrow, John, at the triage, and Matt.
Sounds good.
And if you want, I can set up the same thing for the triage meetings. Are you planning on doing them every 2 weeks, just like the same?
Well, yeah, we agreed not to do them that frequently, didn't we? We said, I think that was what Ryan Hinch. Well, that was the last time we talked.
It'll be our second meeting tomorrow, so hold off until we do the next TC meeting to find out for sure about that. Okay.
Okay, I'll try to come tomorrow. The only reason I missed last time was I just didn't have it on my calendar. So.
Cool. All right. 8 o'clock Eastern time.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.